full stream notes, and then we're going to get things going. Alright, so we're going to start with Mr. Jedi's list here. I believe, I don't remember which position you ended. I think you ended third or second, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not important. The important is top 8, and then we do the draft today. So best of luck, Mr. Jedi, in your draft. But of course, I'm going to root for my teammate. So please don't be sad about it. So second, great, excellent. So this is Mr. Jedi's list. It was a diamond wild deck running Kagulichu as a champion. So, you know, right from the gate, we've got some very cool tools for blood wild decks in the hero fall. I think one of the first thing that makes this deck really works is that the addition of better resource base in Well of Ancients. You know, it providing the thresholds that we need is very key in such a list. And you'll see when we start reviewing the other cards that there's a clear tension on the thresholds required for this list to work. And having Well of Ancient really enables a list like that to live. And if you don't have it, Well of Ancient, I'm not sure that this list would even make sense. But clearly, you know, running 4 lily pads, 4 Well of Ancients, and 2 shards of Ancients, that's, you know, right there is just 10 sources of both wild and blood, along with 7 cards split on these shards. So that's 17 sources of each threshold. That's more than enough to hit any one of the 2 threshold combination on turn 2. And this becomes a very key thing with this list. So, and you'll see why there's one lucky here. And this is the treat here. One of the key things that makes this deck really strong, and where this will explain a lot of the card choices here, is the Underworld Crusader here. That's just an absolute boss, really. And let me just try to see if I have this working. Image Underworld Crusader. Alright, does that work? I don't know if it works. Oh, no, it doesn't work. Okay, I thought I had it set up, but I'll work on that. So, Underworld Crusader is a 3 cost, 1 blood threshold, 4/4, right out of the gate. 3 cost, 4/4 with only 1 threshold is very good. Very good value for cost. Very easy to splash. There's a minor socket, even more value on a card. And there's more. We're like in an info commercial, right? And there's more. When it dies, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. What? Like, this is extreme value. Not only does it draw, it is a 3/4/1. It's a built-in 3/4/1 at the cost of 2 health. There's a minor socket that is very flexible. You know, between matches you can switch, you know, gems in. But the kicker is that there's a requirement, right? And this is not a small requirement. Deck building, you can include this in your deck only if you contains at least 10 different Underworld troops. It does count as 1, so you need 9 others. This is why you see here. Hey, thanks for the follow, Solid Gobi, appreciated. Welcome to the learning experience. So this is why you see, you know, these one card one-offs everywhere in the list, is to be able to hit the crucial 10 different Underworld troops for the Crusader to be good. And it is very good. As Jadim Jedi mentions, this is Skyguard and Steadfast on the Crusader in main deck. That means that it is a big wall, and when it dies you draw cards, so you kind of want to be blocking with this troop anyway. That's very great. If we let's look at the cards that we have more than once, right? There's the Braves that enable a turn 2 3 cost play, and the Crusader on turn 2 is just insane. There's 4 Might Singer of Ages. When you look at the list, you'll see that this is an all troop list besides 3 cards. So the chances of Might Singer hitting if there's no shard on the top is extremely high. So this works very, very well with what the list is doing. It's also a very good late game threat. And as we mentioned, we have 17 sources of wild in the shard base, along with 4 braves that provides a wide threshold. So hitting 5 different wild threshold with this list is not a problem. You don't hit 5 wide thresholds often on turn 5 though. You do need 2 bloods usually before you go with 5 threshold, but that's still, you know, turn 7. But, you know, turn 7 Might Sing of Rages with 5 threshold is still a threat that is a must kill the first, you know, as soon as it enters play, and if not, then you're dead. So clearly, you know, high value card here, along with Crusader, lots of value in a small package that costs not a lot, so works really well. We've got 3 Hero Falls, arguably best removal in the format right now, although you do need to have 2 blood threshold to play it, but if you do, destroy target opposing troop, then void each opposing troop in the same with the same name in hands and deck. The troop targeted by Hero Fall goes to the crypt, it's not voided, so that's important. But if there's, you know, if your opponent is playing 4 of cards, they will sometime have another copy in hand, and if you Hero Fall the copy in play, it will remove the copy in their hand. So a small portion of the time, Hero Fall is destroy a troop, make them discard. The part where it voids card from the deck is mostly irrelevant, but if you're playing a long attrition game, which this deck is clearly able to do, then being able to remove threats from their deck tends to give you a small edge in the long game. So very, very efficient card here. And of course, you know, for Hierophant, for Vampire King, these cards have proven time and time again they're extremely high value for their cost. Very, very efficient cards here that tends to run really well. So GDM Jedi, which gems were you running main deck for the Hierophant? Since you're running Steadfast and Skyguard in this guy, I mean, it might just be Crush and I guess it's not Ramp. So Crush and can't be blocked. +3 and unblockable on Hierophant. +3. Unblockable is a minor. Okay, you sacrifice something and it gets +3. Got it. Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then it just grows bigger. And it's a very big evasive threat that it's hard to deal with. And of course, 3 Krakazors. Again, 3 for 1. So when you look at the list, right, you see cards that have very, very high value. 3, 2, and sometimes 4 for 1. So Krakazors, Vampire King, Hierophant, Crusaders, Hero Fall, very efficient. Might Sing of Ages, very, very good card. Packs a lot of value. You know, these cards tends to eat or generate more cards than they than you have spent for them. So lots of high value cards. And when you look at the one-off, we're not talking about, you know, bad one-off for Underworld, right? Wakizashi Busher is a removal. There's also a Monsoon, so you can play the game of, you know, making your opponent guess which one it is, which great. Monsoon with any of these threats, bring them back. It's just insane. This says Rider, if you have anything in the crypt which you're playing Kagulichu, you might just have Scrounge 2. When this interplay, each opposing champion sacrifices a troop. The format right now, the meta tends to go very wide most of the time, so this just eats their worst troop. But the fact that it's a 2/3 flyer is pretty relevant. It's an evasive troop. It can also block small flyer as well. It blocks Vampire Princess and Vampire Prince, which is relevant in the format. So very cool card. Even though it's an uncommon, it does pull its weight, right? Exarch of the Egg, just, you know, dead touch troop that just blocks. I'm pretty sure this is great. And if there's a lot of ground combat that happens, I might see also that this list plays something like the new command troop that is 2/1 for 3 dead touch that has Crunch 3 that can become a 5/4. That could be another thing, right? Yeah, I did. It was working this morning, so I don't know why it's not working now. Let me just test it. Image burn. Should be working. It was displaying just before I started the stream. It's just, but yeah, it worked. It did work. I don't know why it's not working now, but it did work. All right, so and this is the list, right? So lots of interesting choices. Sensei draws a card. Acolyte just ramps and provides some dreadlings. Again, there's a few scrounge cards in the list, so that does make sense to have more dreadlings, even though you don't want to go out of your way to get them. We've covered the one embosher, one Balthazar. There's a lot of decently sized troop, goes really well with Balthazar, and of course Pav Yazukan as an insurance policy, just, you know, destroys a card. It can be anything. It can be a constant, an artifact, anything. So great, a lot of value, right? It's just value town. This list is just value town. It's not necessarily the fastest list, but it's pretty fast. I mean, it's more, you know, on the aggro slash mid range scale, aggro slash control scale, and the middle being mid range. This deck is, you know, it's mid range, but it's a bit closer to being aggressive, right? It's not mid range being closer to be control. This is clearly an aggressive list, all troops list. The one thing that it doesn't want the opponent to be playing is Mass Polymorph Dangler, since it's 100% it, besides a few hero files. So yeah, good cards, that deck, and we'll see that there's a lot of this in the Cosmic Showdown. The reason for it is just that they printed so many good cards, just cards on their own that are just good, and then you just, you know, bunch them together and you have your big mid-range deck with a lot of value. And even if you're playing against like Extinction, right, or Counter Magic, this is very close to, this plays the same way as the list I was playing before on stream, the Diamond Sapphire Wild list, in the sense that it just prints proactive threats. There's a few removal, and there's a bunch of troops that does interact with what your opponent is doing. Yeah, who knew what Bloodwhite would be good, right? This was, I think, with Hero Fall, and then there's the reserve, very important, integral part of the list here. So 4 Carnosaurus, 4 Clocodons, a lot of respect for the aggressive decks. Carnosaurus being able to deal with opposing Might Singer is very important as well. Against control decks, if there would have been any, Vampire Princess is fairly great. If you can sneaking a Yazukan, this guy, you can't have it live on the board. So and it has Life Drain as well, so for grindy matchups, great card to have. Rotten Rancor as a catch-all. I'd be interested to know, Jedi, when did you sign in the Rancor? Against which deck did you sign in the Rancor? That would be cool. And of course, Groove Warden, just to steal all artifacts and constant, as a catch-all against constant deck, and also against the dwarf deck, and there were a bunch in the other big wild deck. That makes a lot of sense. And Warden just, you know, wrecks the blood constant deck. It wrecks the dwarves deck. It's also a, when it enters play effect, so even if they kill the Warden, you still get to take all their constant and artifacts and transform them into seed pods, which is extremely good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I think I'm just going to replace one of the Champazars in my list to run a Grove Warden. I like this option a lot. This is not something I considered, but yeah, I'm just clicking it on here. Grove Warden instead of Chomp. That makes a lot of sense. One card that I'm not seeing in this list that could have been great, and I don't know, maybe you can give us your thoughts for that card in the list, is the Haunted Cry, that with Scrounge 1 draw 2 cards and lose some health, if I'm not mistaken. I know you do have, you know, ton of value cards, so you don't necessarily need that much card draw, but it is hard to fit though. You need, when you're playing that many troops, it's extremely hard to fit. So, but still, you see that, you know, the shard base is you know, 17 very flexible, and there's just a lot of value. This is just a good, strong, mid-range, aggressive list. Yeah, that does make sense. All right, so that was the list here. So JD, before we go on to the next list, did you add you know, matchups or list that you didn't want to face with that list? Was there an archetype that you tested that you know, made you say, well, if I fight this one, I might just be, you know, I might be I might not be favored to win, but I don't expect this to be run a lot, and we're going to run with it, kind of thing? That would be my last question before we go on the next one. But I do love the list. It packs a ton of value, and it's just strong cards. Might Singer, very, very strong new tools. The Crusader, just insane value. You know, Aerofan, being able to play Aerofan and Vampire King is just great as well. There's not a lot to say against this list. Winter Moon will probably be tough, and Close Coffin would be tough. Yeah. Close Coffin tends to, yeah, against a list full of troops, Close Coffin is kind of a big deal. One week ago, more anti-aggro. Oh, that certainly served you well in this tournament anyway. But that's a nice list here. And I believe Kind Mind is your teammate, right? Was running pretty much the same list with a very small difference. Also made the top 8. So, you know, when you have two very similar lists making the top 8, you know that the deck is good. It does need, you do need skill and luck to be able to achieve top 8, but to have two lists, two identical lists, more or less identical, that makes the top 8. That's a testament to the deck builders behind it. And it's the same shard base, it's the same card main deck. I believe there's a small difference in the reserves. This list runs 2 less Clockadon for 2 Prowlers. And I think going forward, I like it destroyed me with a 2 card difference too. Yeah, the Prowlers are insanely good right now in the format. Not only will you continue to see the Hierophants, there will be a ton of Crusaders. There's Trickster, and if you're playing against the Diamond Crusader deck, Ardent Crusader deck, there's also the Defender there. There's not a lot of short combinations that don't run troops with sockets right now. So being able to play Blood and have Prowlers in the list is extremely good. And it's a Void effect, so it doesn't trigger on death. So it's clean interaction with the Crusaders. I think that going forward, I wouldn't be surprised to see Blood list running 4 Prowlers in the reserves. It's that good. And even if you don't get to use a one-shot, it's still, you know, it's still a 3/3 for 4, which is not too bad. And it is an underworld troop, so might even be running 1 main deck and like 3 in the reserves. Kind of deal. But I don't see a lot of lists without cards with sockets. That is a big difference, and Prowler certainly pulls weight here. I love the Yazuken in the list just to grind out even a bit more. And Clockadon is great, but it was mainly against the util decks of this world. And now that we have known lists, maybe the util deck builders will be able to adapt their lists. But you know, a list like that presents such high power threat so quickly that I feel even, you know, the new util lists will have to run like 4 main deck tendrils just to be able to work with this. Yeah, the Prowler voiding avoiding Saga the Troops is just so great. The one thing you need to take into account while playing a Crusader list, either the Ardent on the Underworld version, is that when you're reserving, you cannot remove the one-offs Underworld Troop, because if you do and you get below 10 Underworld Troop in your list, you cannot run the Crusaders. So there's not a lot of room to work with compared to other lists. So what you will usually see is taking 4 of one card and then replacing it with 4 of another card most of the time. The cards that are not Underworld also are prime targets for switch in the reserves. So Krakosaurus, Balthazar, and the Braves, although I don't see the Braves coming out that often. There's a few Underworld troops in the reserves, so it's not that, we have we have one, we have the Azukan, and we have Prowlers here, so that does, give you a bit more room to work with. But we only have looked at the Blood Warded from JD the Jedi and the Kind Mayhem, his teammate, and looking at the difference. And my guess would be the only thing going forward that I would change is just I have 3 to 4 Prowlers in the 75. I think that would be very sensible, and maybe another Warden. From what I played in the ladder so far, since Eurofall has came out, when you encounter either artifacts or constant, there's a bunch, so that does make sense. Okay, so next deck we go with let's go with the other Crusader deck, and this is Jeff Hoogland's list that Pincha Chills was also running it. This is another Crusader deck, but it is an Ardent Crusader deck, so this is as close as you can be to Mono Diamond as possible without being it. So if we look at the list, we have the 4 Crusaders here, and we're going with Josefina as the champion, 4 Escort, 3 Martyrs, 3 Island Shinobis, 3 Defender, 4 War Party Guide to draw a card. So this is more or less the place, this is the Might Singer of Aegis counterpart in the Diamond list, in the Ardent Crusader list. 3 Williams, 1 Freebooter, 1 Tactician, 3 Hero of Legends, and 3 Silver Talent. So you see in this list there's a lot more 3-ofs, because of Ardent has a higher number of high quality troops to play with if you're playing aggressive. So that makes, there's only 2 1-ofs. So that's a good argument for this list. It's more consistent than the Underworld one. It's also a lot easier on the thresholds here. It's mainly Mono Diamond, so you can run a lot of things. Another great thing about this list, look at the removal suits. We've got 7 removal spell, and we've got 7 removal spell that doesn't send the target to the crypt. So when facing other Crusaders, you can remove them without triggering them, amongst other things, right? If you're facing Wild, you can easily remove a Radwood Master Moss without any issue. And there's a ton of stuff that not fitting the crypt right now is a big deal, I feel. There's Crunch, there's Winter Moon, there's a ton of things that can, go in the crypt for value. And having a removal set that really pushes forward, the Void part is very great. Another thing to mention, in terms of value, Silver Talent Educator, extremely good for value here. The gems of choice were Protectory Defender with the Major Diamond of Ardent, which when it attacks, it readies all Ardent troops and gives them +1/+1, and all the troops are Ardent. So it's a anthem effect for the ones that comes from the Magic Barrel. It's just a +1/+1 to everything when it attacks. So very, very great. When War Party Guide attacks, you reveal a card from the top of your deck. If it's a troop, you draw it. Sorry, Shinobi, when you gain a diamond threshold, when you gain a charge, any threshold, when you gain a charge, you exhaust a troop. So the Valiant Escorts, 2/1 for 1, pay 1, sacrifice this, put another troop you control into your hand. can make your key cards dodge removal, dodge Crocosaurs, chump block, and goes back to your hand to get more come into play triggers like Silver Talon Adjudicator and William Rowan. The two one-offs also are used to remove blockers. So this is a very, very strong aggressive. This is a list that wants to play a 2-drop on turn 2, a 3-drop on turn 3, and then remove whatever you're playing that would block these troops, and then go from there, win from there. This is where you're going with this list. This is a lot more aggressive than the Underworld Crusader list, a lot more low to the ground. This is clearly an aggressive list. It's not a mid-range list. But there's a decent amount of staying power. Crusader, when it dies, the Ardent one creates 2 Phantoms, and they're into play. If you're able to push a decent amount of damage early in the game, the 2 Phantoms might just be what you need. You know, Silver Talon Adjudicator provides a lot of value, and it's also Flight Troop. If you manage to snatch a few Valors from Hero of Legion, you can, you know, make these small Flight Troops even bigger. You can make, you know, Rowan attack being invincible. That's great. At some point you get Rowan and you just win. So this is the aggressive, very, very aggressive, you know, Ardent Crusader list. From the reserves, we have a few Transmogrifates and Price Fall for the big wild decks, Purify for, you know, any decks that would play Banes, eggs into your deck, or any Prophecy deck. So a lot of respect here for them. Tree Soothing Breeze, again, respect for the Util or the Burn lists, as we've seen in the Blood wild decks. Lots of respect for the Burn lists in the reserves choices. Another Adjudicator, all good for against Burn decks, good for grindy matchups, good in a lot of matchups, I gotta say. And the MVP of this list is Clash of Steel. Each champion chooses a card they control, void all non-chosen cards. This is very, very, very good in such a list. As I said, you want to present 1 or 2 threats on turn 1 and turn 2, and then you attack, and if they clog the board with blockers and then you can't attack anymore, you just Clash of Steel, and all of a sudden you have your best troop, and then on your turn you remove their blocker and you start attacking again. Another very great thing with Clash of Steel, there's 3 Martyrs on the list. If you Martyr your opponent's card, and then you Clash of Steel, they have to choose between keeping the monument or one of their troops. So you're kind of mitigating the downside of Martyr, and Martyr without downside is just the best removal in the game ever. So very, very great Clash of Steel. You bring them in when you're playing against Big Wild. You bring the Clash of Steel when you're playing against the Diamond Wild Crusader list. Again, this is Void effect. This is not Destroy effect, so nothing is going into the crypt. Monsoon is not triggered. The Crusaders are not triggered as well. There's, you know, recurring effect from the crypt are not triggered. This is very, very strong. Good morning, Stay. Welcome to the stream. Very, very strong list here. Transmogrifate again deals with threats, don't trigger when die effect. Very, very important here. Very strong reserve base. If you want to have, you know, quick wins in the ladder right now, this list is perfect. Very low to the ground, a lot cheaper than the Blood wide list. You know, the other list runs Vampire King. The Crusaders are not cheap. Guardian Rum is not cheap. Hero of Legion is not cheap, but the rest are all, you know, rares. That doesn't fetch a big price. And just a finish, just MVP. You know, even if you Clash of Steel and you don't have removal, you can remove their blocker for, you know, 1 attack. And if you didn't use your champion power in your late game, you can, you know, lock something for 2 turns, and that's usually enough to kill someone. Very, very strong champion. You know, Adjudicator. What's the price on Adjudicator? Do we have price Adjudicator? Does that work? Yeah, it's at 240. Acting, you know, it's not cheap, but it's not a chase rare either. Let's just hero price, hero of Legion. Hero of Legends fetch 1000 platinum. Price, William, Rowan. Oh, it's 480 right now. Yeah, maybe people catched up and you know, snapped the adjudicator from the AI. I mean, as soon as they previewed adjudicator, everyone knew that this was constructed playable with maybe a price outdated double worker pro spy. Okay, that works. That works fine. So yeah, this is not a cheap list either, but you know, these cards work really well together, very low to the ground. And this is another list that tends to go wide. So right now, you know, these two lists, and shout out to set designers, engineers from X Entertainment. They created a set, Hero Fall, that's about the conflict between Ardent and Underworld. And the first big tournament with this set in constructed, we see the two biggest breakout decks being an Underworld-centric deck and an Ardent-centric deck. This is just crazy. This is the essence of the conflict right there, in constructed, you know, following through with the story of the set. You know, providing the players with incentive to play these archetypes, and it works. It works really well. We see that the Crusader card, extremely good value for cost. Ardent, Silver Talon Adjudicator, extremely good value for cost. And then we have these other cards that are extremely good value for cost. And it's no wonders that we're playing these archetypes here. And there will be many more lists with Crusaders in the futures, I can tell you that. These cards are very strong. Yeah, the sockets we use is Setfax Cargo. Oh, that's for your list, right? Dark Art is another consideration since the list does plays 7 Sagat troops, but Dark Art is it's for the grindy game, and this deck is not grindy at all. As Jeff was mentioning on his stream, when you're playing against wide, you kind of transition into a bad control deck, but it does work. It does work. So another Crusader list, very efficient low to the ground, a bit quicker in putting some threats on the board. If I'd have to pick a winner between the Underworld Crusader list that we just reviewed and this Ardent Crusader list we just reviewed, I would pick the Kind Minds list just because of the two Gemstone Prowler. They're just so good at dealing with the Crusaders, but this list running so many, more removal that just don't, trigger dead effects. Really strong. It's hard. This is two titans battling together, and this is why I love this set so far. Look at these lists. They're perfectly representing what the set is about and what the game is about right now. This is just crazy to me. Very cool design, well executed. Hit the ball to the park right there, out of the park. Just very good sets. We have one last list to review, and this was BKYD's list. He also made top 8, will be participating in the Cosmic Crown Showdown today. Let's see if we have him in the stream right now. We don't. That's a shame, would have been great. But he did provide me with some pointers to his list. Oh no, and we even have another list to review after that, so hang in there. We have another list after that. So his list was a Knight's Bane OVO list. This is a Valor centric list. So the shard base here I feel is a bit ambitious. We're saying 4 cobblestones, 4 Shard of Conquest, 3 innovation, 3 purples. So we've got 10 shards with 01 resource, no temporary resource generation. We've got 7 whales. That's a ton of whale. You don't want to play that many, because if your starting end is 2 whales and a bunch of cards, it's not a playable end. because the whales won't provide any threshold. You need to already have threshold. So I feel like just looking at the resource base, this clearly needs to a lot of love, a lot of work. 7 whales is very high, and I feel like this should cut at least 4 of these for shard prism. Primal prisms that just provide any thresholds, that will just make the list stronger and a bit more forgiving about the well of the 2 whales here. But nonetheless, it was able to top 8 with it, so that does require a decent amount of luck for each of these participants, but ambitious shard base here. Let's just see what the deck was packing, and there's a lot of interesting choice here. So again, 4 Ardent Crusaders. So we're now out of the top 8 lists, and I only have 5 of the list, but I'm not, 4 of the 8 lists that of the 5 lists that we know from the top 8 were running Crusaders. So that has to tell you something right there. So we see 4 Ardent Crusaders, the Ardent troops that we're running here, 2 Valiant Escorts, 1 Frost Mage, 1 Rowan, 1 Trickster, 4 Hero of Legions, 1 Elder of Lost Ages, 2 Moonrise Elders, and 4 Out of Embers. Really, Out of Ember is the one closing the games most of the time with this list. You want to be generating Valor, then you hit with Out of Ember and start, doing 3 damage wherever you want to win games with. This is how the list goes. In terms of actions, we see 3 Transmog Your Fate, pretty standard. 1 Hereafter. He is playing next Bane Ovo, so brings back something from the crypt, reverts it. It's like a raise dead effect. Essentially a rise again for 1 at quick. There's 2 Mind Call to reduce the cost of 2 cards in your hand by 1. He doesn't run a lot of 2-drops, so that makes sense that on turn 1 you play Mind Call, and on turn 2 you play one of the 3-drops, or a 2-cost Discombobulate. I do, there's a decent reasoning behind it, and you can make your 4-drops 3-cost, which makes a big difference. So it's a RAM card for 2 cards, but then again, if you're playing, cards like Howling Braves, right? Over the course of a game, you will accelerate 1, 2, or 3 cards before it becomes mostly irrelevant. So having Mind Call accelerating 2 cards is not that bad when you think about it that way as an accelerator. Of course, Brave being a troop does create a lot of value, a lot of additional value over Mind Call, but that does make a bit sense here to accelerate the deck, because it's a bit slow. Cleansing Touch again, revert a card and then create a Valor into your hand if it's your card. Works decently well with Ovo, and this is a Valor centric list. So Cleansing Touch and Hereafter here to bring things from the crypt. We see even more recursion from the crypt with the Ozawa's Wish here on the 2 copies. Put target artifact, constant, or troop with cost 3 or less from your crypt into play. Again, the highest costed troop in this list are 4-cost troops. And Mind Call, change them to be permanently 3-cost, therefore being able to get back with Ozawa's Wish. So there's a decent, recurring theme going on here. There's some neat interaction. Ozawa's Wish being able to retrieve Ardent Crusader is a big deal as well. We've got, Elder of Lost Ages just to wrap up the Ardent troops. 3 Infinitrix, which seems to be great. Working well with all the different threats that there are in this list. Could make for a very strong comeback. Life Drain with Aerofall and the gem rotation has become a very rare commodity. Gaining health is very rare commodity, so playing Iron Infinitrix here is a big deal. Although this list is playing Diamond and Sapphire, I don't understand why it's not playing Adjudicator instead of Infinitrix. There's even, Adjudicator is an Ardent troop. It enables Crusaders, so I at least, just trade Elder of Lost Ages for 1 Adjudicator. But clearly I would just, you know, trade these 3 cards for 4 Adjudicator, and I feel that the list would just be better. Discombobulate is a weird choice as well. I feel that this list could easily run some, it's close to being Mono Diamond. It could run, you know, Bring to Justice, Martyr, more Price Fall. Price Fall mainly is a bit of a hit and miss. If you expected a lot of Crusader, Price Fall does deal with them, although they do trigger Uncrypt effect, so that's a bit of a pain. Maybe more running around, but I feel that these, you know, these cards here, choices could have been better with more Adjudicators and you know, better suited removal for the expected meta. But it's hard to judge a list when you don't have the expectation that we're used to build a list, right? If you know, if this player expected it to be a bit slower meta and you know, less AV removal, so I guess the Infinitrix makes you know, a slower list makes sense, and a more ambitious shard bait makes sense, but clearly not suited to fight against the either of the 2 other Crusader lists. Wrapping things up, we've got Art of Ember, just MVP, clearly constructed playable card here. 4 cost 3/4. When this enters play, create a Valor, put it into your hand. When you play a Valor, deal 3 damage to target opposing champion or troop. Extremely strong card. We've got 2 Moonshine Elders. When they come into play, create a Valor for each Ardent troop you have. So if you have 2 or 3 and plus this guy, you get 4. And then you can just kill in 1 turn an opponent with Art of Embers there. So the Valor Diamond Ruby list, I feel we'll see something nice coming out of the woodwork with that. I love this. I love this idea a lot. I don't think there will be Sapphire in the list though. I think it will be much lower to the ground. You know, if we look at the Jeff Uglin's list, for instance, I think that this list here could absolutely be trading the Adjudicator for Art of Embers and these 2 for Ruby cards, and just be even more aggressive and provide some very real reach to the list. I think this could be another very cool iteration, and the nice thing with this change is that it doesn't hurt the reserves as much, and you just go with more aggressive cards in Ruby, and there's a ton. So I got the deck list by asking the actual players to for their list yesterday. You know, Jeff posted his list. GDM Jedi posted his list. Kind Mime, I did ask him directly. The BKYD's list, I asked him directly. And I believe Identikit posted his list as well. So interesting list. There's a lot of cool ideas, but I feel that out of the list that we have to review today, this is the less powerful list. It feels like there's a lot of tension between multiple directions, where the deck builders wanted to have reach, wanted to play Ardent Crusader, yet there's definitely strong interaction here at the core, but I feel like he missed a lot of things that were important for him to succeed. However, you know, he was able to succeed, so, you know, who am I to criticize this list this too much, right? The one thing that I really dislike about the list is the shard base. You know, we can criticize the card choices a lot, but you know, that shard base to me is wrong. He had to have above average luck with the shard base to reach the top 8. I feel, and it might just be a testament to his skill as a player, though, being able to compensate with you know, very tight plays. But I feel that this list this shard bait puts him at a disadvantage in the top 8. If it would be top 8 constructed today, I would not favor this list to be winning the crown. Oh wow, thanks a lot. Elwins, do you have the list somewhere? I would be interested to see the list, and maybe we can review them. The fact that there's a util list in the top 8 really, I'm really happy with this. Util just became better with set 5, and that does make a lot of sense to see a util list there. And a mono ruby list also makes a ton of sense. There's a, you know, and this is why you see here in the reserves there's not a lot of respect. There's no respect at all for burn list besides maybe a binding light. Hey Tilly369, thanks for the follow, appreciate it. Welcome to the learning experience. I don't see a lot of respects for the util and the burn list of this world in this list, in the reserves list as well. I feel that the reserves are, you know, all over the place. I love the 2 prize fall. I love the 2 glory. Very, very great. And 2 glories with a list that is less, you know, concentrated on the 2 drops does make sense, since it doesn't affect the Art of Amber, Elders, Hero of Legion, Crusader of this world. It does remove the Elder of Lost Ages and the Infinitrix though. Well, that's a bit of a weird mix, but Glory will be in more Diamond Dex reserves going forward, as we've seen so far. Oh, nice. That was gas, yeah. So we had 5 lists out of the 8, and we know that outside of these there was 1 util player and 1 mono ruby player, so that's a good layout of the format. Last list we have to review is Identikit's list. Also, teammate Ducklet was running the same list as well. This is a player that comes from the limited side of the pound, but packs a very, very strong constructed list here. And when we saw the Vampire Prince, a lot of people, and Aerofall, a lot of people expected to have a more of a mid-range / control-y mono blood list, and this is clearly it here. Lots of great interactions, shard base, very simple, 20 blood shards, 4 star spheres, great in such a list, enables selection, and that's really key. This list really relies on vampires, so we see the full set of vampires main deck, 4 princesses, 4 princesses, 4 kings, along with 2 ghast. Removal suit here, very efficient removal for the meta, 2 Rodcast, 4 Hero Falls, 4 Extinction. Can easily deal with the true base decks, aggressive decks. The top 8 lists were not posted. I requested them from the players that were kind enough to provide them to me, and also some of the players did share them on Twitter and on different media, so this is where I gathered these lists. So we see the removal suit, very, very strong. We see 2 Exarch of the Egg with Death Touch on the ground, very important in this meta, with a lot of ground troops and a lot of Crusaders. Rounding up the cards here, main deck, 4 Corpse Flies and 3 Arachnophobia, just to make sure to control a ball. The cherry on the cake, the MVP on the list, Xentot's Malice. Really, really great card. And you might look at this list and you see, why the hell are we playing Xentot's Malice in a list where there's no Spiders generation besides 2 Exarch of the Egg and 3 Arachnophobias? And this is where the beauty of this list comes from. We're playing Zorath, Bloodspinner Zorath, which creates a Dread Banner. A Dread Banner is a constant that creates 1 Dreadlings every turn and put it into play. The ghast was speed and intimidation, so can't be blocked by troops with less power than this. So as you can see, lots of evasive attacker that provides some life gain, and there's Dreadling creation. So and there's a lot of troops that dies because of the suit of removal that this list is packing. So Gallows Ghast, for the ones that are not familiar with it, when a troop dies, any troop, any side, your opponent's troop, your troops, it gets +1/+1 if it's your hand. So it tends to be extremely big by the time you play it. So that list just hold the ground with a ton of removal, grind the games out with life gain with the vampires. Use Sent.Matis to put some eggs into the opposing decks with the health that you gain from the vampire. At some point mid-game, you activate Bloodspinner Zorat. You start gaining Dreadlings, which you can sacrifice to gain 2 health and draw a card. At that point, you've got another health gain engine going. Very great against aggressive decks. And then you start drawing cards and gaining health, using your health to put Dreadlings in your opponent deck. So this is a win condition on its own, alongside with the vampires that gain a ton of health. And if that's not enough, very late, once you know you have troops dying every turn, at some point you just attack with a Gallows Cast that is like 18-18, 10-10, 9-9, and hit out of nowhere for 9 damage and just steal a game like that. So very, very strong list here. Does a lot of great things. Able to grind out games very, very long time. And when you look at the reserves, there's a lot of very interesting choices here. Withering Touch against the decks that are sporting either removal for the gas or just interrupts. Chaos Key, a lot of and a Noxious Glory and a Dishonorable Death. So you see a lot of respect for, you know, Crusaders and troops that have effects when dying. So that's why you see a ton of cards that void cards. Very, very important in the expected meta. And you see that these decks that were able to get into the top 8 clearly identify that the Crusaders and the Undead effect will be a key part of the meta, and using cards on the crypt with Scrounge would be a key part of the meta, and we're packing a lot of stuff that voided cards, voided troops, instead of just things that destroy troops, and that is a key part of the meta. 2 Rodcasts for the very, you know, meta-packed cards that cost 3 or less that are very, very efficient. Rodcast is just straight up MVP. It destroys 70% of the big threats of the meta that we reviewed in the list so far, so extremely good removal in mono blood list. You know, we have the voiding cards. We've got more kill, you know, more removal if needed. 1 Runas, always great. You're putting a ton of things in the opposing crypt with the base deck. So in the blood matchups and the grindy decks, Runas does make sense. This I love it so much. Steel Intel, new card, 2 costs, 1 blood threshold, basic action. It's a rare. Target card in an opposite crypt, its threshold become blood, put that card into your hand. Scrounge 2, gain 2 resources. That's so great in grindy matchups. You just steal one of their best card that you just removed, and you gain 2 thresholds. You gain 2 resources, so you can play it right there. So this card is just free most of the time. You just steal their best card in the crypt and you just play it. That's insanely good card for control deck. You will see this card in a lot of blood decks in the future. Very, very cool. The one thing that I'm a bit skeptical on is the Chaos Keys. I feel that they could have been something else. Maybe just more copies of Dishonorable Death at that point. The advantage of Chaos Key is that it cannot be interrupted once it's on the board, but you know, it does provide the information that it is on the board, so I'm not too keen on the keys there. I love the Withering Touches. I love the Glory. As an additional cost to play this, sacrifice a troop, void each troop with attack 2 or less. There's a bunch of aggressive troops in the format right now that are 2 attack or less. The Crusader are not, but a lot of cards that goes with the Crusader are, and this is a void effect. So, the Tree Boy, how are you doing today, sir? And yes, the Chaos Keys does help to deal with Constants, which is a bit hard to deal with in Blood as well. So, a lot of informed choices, very strong list, well-rounded list, lots of removal, lots of evasive threats. All the threats are evasive besides Exart, but this is not a threat, so everything else is evasive. There's a ton of life gain. This deck wins the late game. The late game hands down against true base decks as well. Tons of great things here, and it's not a surprise to see a list like that to make it to the top 8, and lots of neat interaction in the reserve great list. I love it. Makes a lot of sense, and utilizing Champion Zorat to power Xentots Mattis, you will see more of that in the future. That is extremely strong interaction. Xentots Mattis was already identified when it was spoiled as a very strong constructed card, was never played because we didn't have the enablers needed, but now that we have champions that can create on-demand spiders to be able to be sacrificed and gaining health, just crazy. I wouldn't be able to see another blood white list playing Shoku as a champion to generate spiders for the Xentots Mattis instead of Zorat. If there's enough other incidental Dreadling creation with things like Dread Harvest, for instance, that might just be a thing for Blood Wine as well. Doing great. So we've got a ton of nice lists to review this morning. Again, this wrapping up the 5th list that I have for today. Edwin's mentioned in the chat that among the other 3 participants of the top 8, there was 1 neutral list and 1 mono Ruby burn list. So pretty much everything that most players expected in the Cosmic Round Showdown. The one list that I personally was expecting to see having great success, but maybe the last 8 player that we don't have was playing, is a Diamond Sapphire control list with Banks, playing the Adjudicator for value, playing the Elduran's Glory for even more value, board wipes. But it's a hard choice right now. The problem with Banks right now is that there's so many voids effect that it's hard to have something in the crypt from your opponent removing your troops. It more likely comes from you putting troops in your crypt, and if you're playing Sapphire and Diamond, it's not likely going to happen unless you're playing change course and maybe another few cards. So but there's a ton of work. So now we have the ground, we have the base of our new constructed meta with Hero Fall. And from what we've seen so far, there's a lot of aggression. There's a lot of proactiveness to the meta. So if you want to tussle with a meta like that, you need to be proactive, you need to be disruptive, and you need to be able to withstand a constant assault of threats. If you want to be playing control, I feel that you have to be playing blood. It's really hard to play diamond, non-blood based control right now in a meta like that. Maybe we'll see a very heavy fog deck, a fog list against a control list that would ignore the troops on the board would be fairly good in a meta like that, which is basically saying ignoring 40% of the opponent's deck. So that could be a thing, but the decks right now are pushing a lot of pressure on your health, so you need to be able to answer that in kind, and it's very hard to swing games. There's a lot of aggression in the format right now, so be ready if you enter the ladder in the next few days. That will Nirvana was playing Pathfinder. That's interesting. There's a lot of new, very great tool for Pathfinder, so definitely something to check out. We've also seen the one thing that is missing from this top list was a Prophecy burn deck, and Prophecy was bugged for this tournament. So the interaction between the Seer and the Elder was not working. So basically, if you add a line that draws a card on a card and then add the line that card copies it, it doesn't draw a card from the copy, and that's a significant problem for the Prophecy decks right now. But once this is fixed, a Prophecy deck just got better with this set, so expect to see more Prophecy decks. Although there's a new card that does answer some amount of the Prophecy decks that are doing in the card Purify, which we've seen out of the Jeff Hoogland's reserves here. Void all Banes, revert all cards in decks, draw cards. So this is a clear counter to the Prophecy burn decks. But maybe we'll see other prophecy-based decks going around. There's certainly the basis of a very strong Sapphire Blood-based deck that runs Psychic Ascension. That's great. Now that there's a known meta, the control decks will start, coming out of the woodwork and start roaming, and at some point we'll see control decks really shining in the meta. But of course, it was expected to not see real control lists out of the top 8. One, the list that more leans toward control is the vampire list, but it's not a typical control list per se. It's just a mid-range list that just runs a ton of removal, and that does have late game threat with Malice, but that's not a dedicated control list per se. What's helping Pathfinder? There's a ton of efficient proactive answers right now. We didn't get any prophecy triggers, but we've got alt. We've got a ton of efficient removal in Diamond as well with Bring to Justice. That's a list that runs a ton of actions, so Psychic Ascension is a card that, as an alternate win condition in a list like that is really great. It's also a list that tends to ignore the board, which can be very, very good in a meta where there's a lot of cards, a lot of threats in the form of troops. So there's a few things there that helps the Pathfinder list, but definitely it's still very hard to pull off. There's even more interaction with it in the set 5 as well. We've got more efficient quick removal in Hero Fall. So we've got more bounce spells with Crackling Tide, which is perfectly playable in Constructed. Although Pathfinder list running alt is a big deal to be able to deal with people trying to interact with the combo. So that's why I'm saying Pathfinder just got a decent amount of new tools that it can work with easily. One thing that we don't see in the top 8 in terms of aggressive list that is clearly feasible right now is a Blood Ruby list. We've seen a few during the coverage from Aki of the CCS event, and I'm pretty sure we'll see more in the future. There's a ton of aggression that can be made with that. That makes a lot of sense. Tons of stuff, and there's even the a Blood Diamond aggressive list that could be made as well. So we've seen lists running what upwards of like 26, 28 troops, even 30, 31 troops. So maybe there's even a list that plays both Crusaders on the 4 copies. That would be interesting. A Blood Diamond Crusader list. I don't think that's doable right now. We don't have enough playables for that. But coming into 6-6, that might just be something possible. Yeah, Diamond instead of Ruby. We saw a very interesting list in the coverage that was a Nineveh list that was playing Prophecy. So instead of playing Megbombus, playing Nineveh with a lot of actions that provide charges, and at some point you just draw 2 cards a turn, and you're playing Rage Fires, you're going to hit them when you're drawing 2 cards a turn, right? So very interesting list that was played as well. The Ruby Sapphire list also gained Robomancer with 2 gems that create actions, so can clearly grind out the late game with these. Lots of nice stuff. The space for deck construction right now is so wide, it's just crazy. Lots of thing variable. This is, if you like playing Constructed in the TCG and you're just joined X, you're going to be in for a treat. This is just crazy good.